We are live. Angela, how are you doing today?
Amazing. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. Yeah, just living the dream.
Uh, Me too. Me
Yeah,
too. Well,
after a long weekend.
yeah, thank goodness. I don't know how much I needed that extra day
Right.
until today, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm feeling pretty darn good. I
There
think
you
we
go.
need 3-day weekends.
That needs to be more on the regular. I'll say, can we put that in the like? Who do we have to call or like start a something, a movement to get
We
that
need a
3-day
movement
weekend to be the
because
regular weekend?
I
Yeah.
was refreshed. I got up and worked out, and I was just on top of the world
See.
today. And it was just like Tuesday.
Yep.
What in the world? Sheesh. How was your
No
weekend?
doubt. My weekend was very good. Did some traveling, did some resting, and just kind of caught up on some stuff. So, yeah, it was good to just kind of like disconnect for a minute. You know what I mean? And but at the same time, after having that sort of refreshing break, I'm back and just ready to dive into the content today and have a great discussion.
I love it. I love it. All
Yes,
right. Well, let's
indeed.
let's kick this party off. How
What are
about
we
that?
talking about today? Yeah, indeed. This is episode 6, diving into still on the DevOps Handbook. We're gonna land this plane soon, y'all. But we are on part 5, the third way, the technical practices of continual learning and experimentation. Um,
Yes.
and before we go any further, I did want to say I noticed that we are streaming to X hashtag
Yes.
Twitter
No,
today.
it's Twitter.
Uh,
It's
yeah, it's Twitter. I'm gonna call it. It's Twitter for life. Yeah,
it's Twitter for life, baby.
no doubt. So yeah, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all the folks joining us from Twitter today. Thank you
Hi,
for
folks
tuning
on
in and
Twitter.
checking us out. I know, right? Yeah, welcome to the party.
I just figured out how to do that. I could do it for myself. And I'm like, well, this isn't my stream. Let me click that button. And lo and
Mhm.
behold,
Hey,
it let me add it. So there we go.
yeah, don't ask any questions. Just do it. Next time, just click that button. Let's
Do it.
go.
Just do it. All right.
All right.
So if you don't know, we are reading the DevOps Handbook by Gene Kim et al. This is a tome on all things DevOps. It talks about the book is broken up into 6 parts. It delves into the 3 ways. And now you're making me forget. I was rattling them off when we
I
first
know. Okay.
started.
Let me see. I don't have my reference
Okay.
slide here to bring up on stage, but let
Oh
me see if I
yeah.
can go through these 3 parts if I can't find them.
Flow, feedback, and continuous education and
Oh, you beat me
experimentation.
to it. You beat me to it. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. Part of the first way we're moving, I remember the arrow is dev to ops. The second way is the feedback because ops is coming back to dev and say, hey, let's talk about this stuff. And now here we are today on the third way where we're learning and experimenting. And that's the one with the little bitty loops on the inside of the big loop where we're just
Mhm.
practicing, we're sharing more information between members of the team, even outside the team, and just learning along the way without any ramifications. We just focus on the goal of the business.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. I am excited. This was a much shorter part.
Oh
So
man, I flew through this one.
we flew. Okay. So if you're reading along, I know you can appreciate the fact that this was a much shorter section, and it might be a much shorter stream, dare I say.
Yeah,
Um,
perhaps.
Mayhaps. So this is chapter 19, 20, 21. And this is the third way, continuous learning and experimentation,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So,
Yeah, you're on the right page. We're all
okay,
on the same page.
awesome. So starting off chapter 19, it's talking about enable and inject learning into daily work. And
Mhm.
that really means you need to be learning from your mistakes. You need to be learning from your experimentation. It doesn't need to be during a hackathon or something like that. Uh, you need to be doing this on a regular basis, especially with complex systems. there's always something, and there's not one person who really knows a fully complex system. That person really doesn't exist. There's
Yeah.
probably a myriad of people who know a lot. But here we go. So there was a case study. They kicked off the chapter with a case study. And in that case study, it was talking about when US East went down
Mm-hmm.
in 2011. And I know some of y'all remember that because I know I do. But
Mm-hmm.
guess who didn't go down? Any guesses?
Dare I say it was Netflix?
You said it. You got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And they didn't, because they had designed, they made very, very poignant design decisions. That's what they called it back in like 2009. And they
Mm-hmm.
were preparing themselves in the event of something catastrophic happening. And they, I guess Netflix used to be this huge monolith, and they start moving to cloud native. And there are articles about this. I know Jeff Barr may have written one. I think Jeff Barr did. There's a Medium article out there. A lot was written about this outage, but they had done. They started moving to stateless services, data stored across AZs, graceful
Mm-hmm.
degradation. So if something went sideways, it wouldn't be crash boom. It would be, let's
Yeah.
go down. Let's make sure that, our customers are still having an experience. They had a lot of redundancy. They always allocated more capacity than they needed just in case something like this. Now, not every organization has the money to
Mm-hmm.
do such things, right? So when we're talking about a Netflix having capacity for a whole zone to go down, that's usually not what most, startups or smaller businesses or agencies or whatever. But they had implemented that thing called Chaos Monkey,
Yeah.
right? So you tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, indeed. The Chaos Monkey system, or the Simian Army, as they call it, they're actually injecting failures into their system randomly. And so they're just going to say, you know what, we're going to turn this service off and just see what happens. That's literally the experiment. It's like want to say failure as a service, if there's such a thing. But by doing that and by incorporating that in their day-to-day work, they were preparing themselves for the inevitable, which is
Mm-hmm.
this system failure. I mean, hopefully you don't have to experience a big a failure as an entire region going offline, but knowing that, for example, if they say, okay, system X, we're going to take your database away and see how you respond. And then, okay, well, this application, like you mentioned, starts to fail gracefully. It maybe serves some static content instead of serving dynamic content. I think one of the steps they used was during that particular failure, they took away recommended shows that might have been
Yes.
based on people's past behavior, and they started serving up just like general recommendations or something like that.
Yes.
But they learned how to do these things by using this failure as a service, this Chaos Monkey service, by just turning stuff off and learning from it. And they just made that a part of their day-to-day work. So, I
Right.
mean, we talked about non-events before. I can only imagine a data center going away or a region going away. And you're like, you know what? It's fine. We'll just fail over to this other stuff, or, oh, my application, it's just going to fail gracefully and
We're gonna
everything's going to
roll
be
with it.
fine. Yeah, exactly. You just bounce with it. And why? Oh, because we've done this before. We've experimented with this day to day, and we know how to handle these types of outages. So we can just kind
Exactly.
of run with it. Yeah. So that was
There,
really cool.
I don't I don't know if it was this in this case study, or it was another one where they were talking about, aliens landing. And it was like,
Mhm.
we must prepare for all things, right? Aliens
Yes.
landing is another thing. We should make sure that we have redundancy and we have
Yeah.
a DR plan for such a thing. So um there that was a great case study. You can Google it, like
Yep.
US East down 2011 Netflix. Like, put
Yeah.
those words in, and
You'll
you'll
find it.
probably learn a lot about just the ability to continuously learn and push that envelope, and not worry about breaking things. That's the experimentation part,
Mhm.
and learning from those mistakes. We Once we go past that, that was the culture at Netflix. It was a culture of learning. And in the book, they call it just learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have just is when you hear a just learning culture. Well, culture is, I talk about that a lot because there has to be a level of safety. There has to be a level of trust in your team, in yourself, and in the fact that management approves of those types of behaviors. So,
Yep.
if there's something in here called the bad apple theory. And,
Mm-hmm.
when you make a mistake and you don't want the consequences behind it, and there are really no mistakes, right? If the culture is such that we are experimenting culture or a learning culture, there are no bad apples. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
There are no mistakes on purpose. There's none of that. So, yeah, 19 was a good one.
Yeah. I had a few more notes on it.
Oh, please, because I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
skimming mine.
Yeah. To your point, allowing engineers that make mistakes to share those mistakes so everyone learns from the experience. Because if one person does something wrong that causes the system to fail, and they just kind of hide it, sweep it under the rug and kind of move on, then the next person that comes along might trip over that same whatever it was, right? So you have to have a culture that allows for mistakes to be captured, codified, shared. So everybody sort of levels up, and also so that the management culture or the culture of the company, it doesn't disincentivize experimentation
Exactly.
and accountability. Because if people know that they might be punished or embarrassed by making a mistake or something, then they're going to like do their hardest to just sweep that thing under the rug and push on, be like, oh yeah, I don't know what happened, other
Oh,
than
what
like,
you talking
oh
about?
yeah. Yeah, right, wow.
It
Other
worked.
than wow, yeah, I did that, and yeah, this is what I learned, and this
Yeah.
is how we can not experience that again.
There's a line in that section where it says turning information into knowledge and building the results of our knowledge into our systems. So you 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 have issues. There's information coming in. There's always something to be gleaned from a mistake or something not going the way that you planned, or just this aha moment. And you turn that into knowledge and you build that knowledge into your system to make it more robust. So
Yeah, and one of the ways that they describe doing that is with the postmortem, or with what they call it, a retrospective. I like using the term postmortem, and basically having a record of the timeline. What was the initial cause and the observation? How were you going to mitigate that? And one thing that I like to add to postmortems is like, what did we do that worked? How do we get lucky? Because sometimes you might just kind of skate through an incident, but it wasn't because you had plans for it. It's because you got lucky off of it, right? So I like to capture that as well. But yeah, and one thing I wanted to share with the postmortems, if you're looking for some really good postmortems, I love it when companies share their postmortems publicly, because then we all get to learn from like some companies that are working at amazing scale that, I mean, I couldn't even imagine working at AWS scale or Netflix scale or Atlassian scale or whatever. So if you go to this address, and I have it displayed on the screen here, but for the folks that are listening, it's github.com/danluu, that's DANLUU/post-mortems. And this guy's got a collection of postmortems going way back. He's got them sorted out by the different types of failure, like power outages, config changes, or config mismanagement or something like that. So it's really interesting how he's got it sorted out. And you can just dive in there, find these postmortems, and just learn all sorts of things from these engineers that have shared this information publicly.
oh, I can't
So
wait to dig into it. Thanks for
definitely
sharing
check
that.
out that resource. Yes, indeed.
All right. So retrospectives, we don't like that word. We like the word postmortem.
I don't know. I just
That's
and
fine.
and this wasn't in the book, but I'll share it, and maybe it fits with the postmortem. Is a pre-mortem. And did we talk about pre-mortems already in another
I think
chapter?
so. I think so.
Okay,
It sounds
it might
familiar.
have been. Yeah. So even just like the pre-mortem ties into the postmortem, right? Because you're gonna say, this is what we think might go wrong, so let's kind of plan for that. And then if it does go wrong, you can, the postmortem just kind of fits right in. I don't know.
Indeed. Anything else? there are a couple of things in 19 I just want to mention. Decrease in so there's a section in 19 talking about decreased incident tolerance to find ever weaker failure signals. Failure signals, failure signals, failure signals. That
Yep.
word was bandied about from mid 19 chapter 19 on, right? It harkened to there's always something that leads to something else. Like there are dominoes falling. There could be something that it seems like a very small thing, but it's in actuality, it is not a small thing. It's almost like an indicator of a bigger
Yep.
problem. And remember, I think it was many chapters ago, and it was in a factory, and they were having tons of errors. People were getting injured on the job. And when he came in, he changed things around. He said, you know what? I even want to find out about the non-events. That's not the term that he used, but not when someone, hurts a finger or, hurts a foot, but those near misses. Let me find out about those near misses and dig into those and make those things teachable moments to make the organization safer. So I can't remember the name of the organization. I want to say Alcoa, but I'm not sure. But anyway,
Yeah, I can't recall.
they had those mistakes and those little near misses. They called them failure signals, right? So you want to lower the threshold to what is a failure, right? And you want to document those near misses and those weak failure signals so you can you want to document them so you can amplify them and figure out a way to circumvent those things from happening in your organization. And this section talked about the Columbia Space Shuttle. And I don't you probably have heard about it. It was an example of not amplifying a weak failure signal. I guess some foam had fell off, and it had fell off on other space shuttles takeoffs, and this just so they just chalked it up, right? Oh, it's not serious, but it was serious, and this one brought the space shuttle down. So
it's catastrophic.
It was catastrophic. So let's move on. Any more gems from you?
No, I'm good on chapter 19. Let's move on to chapter 20.
All right. I'm going to put myself on mute for just 1 second. I'm going to let you I'm going to let you run into chapter 20. All right?
Yeah, yes indeed. As I go to I want to get the title of chapter 20 correct. I'm looking at the first edition now, so these chapter names look a little different to me. In the first edition, they call it Convert Local Discoveries into Global Improvements. I think that might be the same way in the second edition, which is the one that I was listening to. But in my notes starting off, I know they talked about using chat ops and basically using chat ops to capture daily work, to show the flow of tasks in such a way that you can see the way that work is being done, right? It's just the work is there. And if a new employee comes on, it's one way to get them up to speed quickly because they can see the work being done. They know who like some of the actors are in the work that's being done. And the one thing that I made a note of, though, because I have worked in companies that use this approach where there's chat ops where you're using Slack or some other chat application, and you get a lot of telemetry or updates from systems that are coming in programmatically. And you get, the person that's acting on these, like saying, for example, hey, I'm about to deploy this. And then the system comes back with, hey, this has been deployed, so on and so forth. And it's cool to see it work and you can kind of follow it, but it's kind of tough without being hands-on if the system isn't completely closed to the point where you can issue those commands from the chat interface. So it's like you're kind of a third party watching this orchestration of work, but unless you know where all these moving parts are, it can be kind of tough sometimes. I don't recall them addressing that per se, but I appreciate them mentioning chat ops in the way that you can kind of use that to show like, hey, this is how we work, and this is like the stream of our work in a visible form where anybody can sort of follow along.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. I personally, the analogy of, for a new developer, you can just kind of follow along in GitHub or not GitHub, I'm sorry, in Slack, right? with the messages and with the build notifications. And that is a great way to understand how things are done. You're learning kind of real time. But in that, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I hope that's not the only thing they do, right? That can't be
Yeah,
the
right.
only part of onboarding, right? Just watching Slack messages. Because I tried it. I'm pretty new somewhere. And I can't, I mean, I'm always reading the Slack messages, trying to get a
Yeah.
grasp of the organization and how things work. And unless there is some context behind it, it's like, it's all gibberish.
Yes.
So
Yes, indeed.
it's really good because that information is there and you can kind of learn from it. But there has to be kind of like a level set or something. So I do think that's a really good idea. Chat ops.
Yeah.
What other great sections did you jumped out at you?
I took a note, and I think it was from this chapter. As I was going back and sort of reviewing my notes, I couldn't recall specifically, but I think it's from this chapter where they talked about guidance and guardrails for experimentation. If it's not from this chapter, I'm just going to apply it here.
Talk
And
about it
we're
anyway.
just going to make it make sense,
Talk
right?
about
So
it.
what I appreciated with that was, and I'm trying to recall the company where they went into this. I think it was it Atlassian? Or no, I think it was another Etsy example where they said, you know what, we have all these different tools that we're using, all these different pieces of software, programming languages or whatever. We're just going to focus on these. Let's just not even worry about all this stuff that we don't even use. Maybe it's legacy, maybe it's just kind of cruft hanging around or whatever. Let's just get rid of all that. And you know what? Let's focus on this. And the way that I appreciated that when they mentioned guidance and guardrails for experimentation is now you can let people sort of just play, but they have some bounds on what they can do. So one example that I've had in that particular space is with containerized applications. So working at a company that has a very sort of focused deployment mechanisms to many different regions. And if you can take your application and put it in a container so that it's containerized such a way, you can use whatever language you want to, you can use whatever sort of database or whatever, as long as everything is packaged up in that container, you can give it all the permissions you need and they can capture those permissions in a vault, then you're good to go. So that's the guardrails, right? Instead of somebody coming in and saying, oh, well, I'd like to deploy this EC2 instance over here, or I'm going to use Google Cloud to run this. Like, no, let's focus on this cloud platform, and you're going to give us a container, and we're going to deploy it for you. And that's that's how it works. But you can do whatever you want to inside that.
So there was, I don't think they used the term shadow IT in one of these chapters, but it alluded to when when ops doesn't give developers or teams what they want fast enough. I think it was the case study with Etsy, and it's talking about standardizing a new technology stack. And ops wouldn't provide us what we needed, so we just built it and supported it ourselves. And we all know shadow IT can be a security risk. It can be very expensive. And it's usually not the way most organizations want to operate. They don't want people operating outside of the confines. So I think this might be the use case you were talking about, where they we're going to get rid of all of the other things that we were using. We're going to standardize our entire platform on PHP and MySQL.
Yeah, it was Etsy. Yeah.
It was okay. Of course, it's Etsy. Yeah. There's a lot of examples because there's so many great examples about Etsy.
Yeah.
So this shows that you remove the problematic infrastructure and platforms, and you give people this. This is the opposite of what you said, where you can kind of just containerize and do what you want. But this is really putting everybody same language, same database, same frameworks. There are benefits to that. For sure, because you can become stronger in that particular framework or programming language, but then it's across the board. If that's what everyone's using, think about how you level up and think about how you escalate your skill set just on this one thing. The mastery is what is going to happen there. So, so it's all about learning. It's all about room for improvements. There was something else in chapter, it could be 20 or 21, where they were talking about having I don't know what they called. I don't think they called it hackathons. They had another word for it, but
Yeah, that was in chapter 21 when they
it
talked about
was.
like directed let's see.
30-day challenge at Target.
Target's 30-day challenge. Let's go ahead and bounce to 21. I really enjoyed chapter 21. I took
It
a
was a
lot of
good
notes
chapter.
for it.
It was a good
Yeah,
chapter.
a lot of
All
good
right.
stuff in there.
Let's see. What's the name of it? Chapter 21. Let's get to it. The name of chapter 21 is
it was talking about
reserve time to create
reserving time,
organizational learning and improvement, which
reclaiming
is
time.
the topic of this entire part of the book.
Yes.
Making time an improvement blitz, where you bring the teams together, and you work and you blitz. It could be a week, it could be 2 days, and of course that has a lot of different names. It's Toyota came up with the name,
The Kaizen term.
Yes. Oh, and I there. Hold tight, everybody. Michael has something he wants to share with you about that, but
yeah,
a little bit about chapter 21. There it is. There it is.
Yeah. And I mean, because we were talking about Kaizen, now let me get my window here. And one of the I'll just read the screen here. Kaizen is a Japanese term that translates to continuous improvement in English. It's a concept and philosophy that focus on the continuous incremental improvement of processes, products, or services. And then this particular wording is from the changelog.com website. Is the home of the Changelog podcast. So I've been a fan of the Changelog podcast for quite some time. And one of the things that they do is they actually have a Kaizen process and they record it and publish it as a podcast. So we all kind of get to see sort of how they use this continual learning to improve the way that they deliver their show, the way that they maintain the websites and systems behind, their podcasts, because they have multiple shows and everything.
Oh, I love it.
So the hosts get together and they talk about, things that they're going to do to improve. One time they talked about building their own CDN, which I thought was kind of bananas, but they tried it and they tested it to see what the performance was like. And they, I'm not going to spoil it to say whether they kept doing that or if they went to something else. Find the episode and listen to it. But it's just one example of how they shared their continual learning and their continual experimentation. So if you haven't seen the, let me get this guy off the screen here. If you haven't seen Changelog and their Kaizen process, or haven't listened to one of their episodes, go to changelog.com and search for the topic Kaizen, and you'll find all the episodes there that they use to kind of share their Kaizen method.
I think we can all learn something from that.
Yeah,
from other people's mistakes and what their learning journey. I mean, I think we do it all the time. Like when we read a blog or when we're learning through someone else's journey. That's basically what we do on a daily basis when we're reading, Confluence pages. We're kind of going on this journey. So we talked about the 30-day challenge at Target in 2015, and imagine going somewhere, you and your team, for 30 days. And I'm assuming larger organizations can kind of get away with that.
Yeah.
Or maybe one product team could get away with that and bring the learnings back to the rest of the organization. But there's coaches who are there for people to come into the Target DevOps Dojo and learn from them and learn from each other and bring their work with the stuff that they want to solve, and it helps them solve their problems, and they can bring it back to their team. And they have these sprints during this 30 days to, fix things and show things and work in concert. And it's not just the 30-day sprint. They have these open labs where anyone can come visit. They have these smaller engagements or whatever. And this is, again, the topic of chapter 21 is reserving time to create organizational learning and improvement. And you learn from that. And we have things called hackathons, or some agencies have communities of practice, or whatever brings folks together in this learning and this community building and learning mindset is there's no downside to any of that. Yeah. So I love the how they broke it up and iterated all the things that they've done doing the dojo. And um, yeah, I'm sure those folks over there really enjoyed that. And it's probably still going on because the coaches, that was their full-time
Yeah.
job. That was not like a project. No, there's come on in, let us help you. Let us help you improve. Let us help you fix a problem or whatever. So
Yeah. And that's the cool part about it, because I think the benefit that Target and companies that can practice something like this receive is that, okay, the way that I saw it was like a boot camp, right? It's like you're going to come in here as this untrained ragtag bunch of developers and operators or whatever with a problem that you're trying to solve, and these drill sergeants of DevOps coaches, they're going to set you straight. They're going to tell you how to work with it. They're going to get you going to solving the problem. And then after that 30-day challenge is complete, those teams are going to go back to their home base or wherever that is. And guess what? They're going to start to evangelize what they've learned. So there may be other teams that don't get to do the DevOps challenge, but those folks that did, they're going to be like, hey, you know what? Let me tell you something. The way that we were working before, we got to change that. Or, hey, I see you guys are having this problem over here. Let me tell you how I learned how to solve a problem like that at the DevOps dojo. And that just kind of proliferates through the company. And again, rising tide raises all ships. So
always
they're definitely going to get benefits from that.
So yeah, we're at time. Did it feel like it?
We are. It didn't, man.
We
Yeah.
fly. We fly.
We flew through it.
So
Yes.
I don't want to drag this out. I want to say, if you have a DevOps days in your city, attended. They made mention of DevOps days. I was a frequent flyer at DevOps Days Philly back in the day. And now that I moved to Atlanta, I will be at DevOps Days in Atlanta, just as an attendee. They used to be free. This one's like $99, which I don't think it's a huge I don't think it's a huge amount of money to hear your people, practitioners of DevOps, and what they're learning and what they're doing. And I hope they still do the 5-minute talks. I used to love that.
They do. And just to kind of follow on to what you're saying, I will be at DevOps Days Los Angeles, that's taking place in conjunction with the Southern California Linux Expo. It's coming up. I believe the dates are in March. It's definitely after. It's coming up soon. But they, to your point though, I just saw an announcement. They are still looking for speakers for their 5-minute talks, and there was a link to some of their the presentations from last year. So, yeah, if you got something that you want to share with the rest of the DevOps community, definitely check out DevOps Days in your area, or if you're in LA, Southern California Linux Expo.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We have to figure out what to read next season. Come on.
We got to figure it out. Yeah, because we're wrapping up. I think next time, as I pull this onto the screen,
is the end.
Next week will be we will be landing this plane called the DevOps Handbook with part 6, security, change management, and compliance. And we talked about this in a past episode, and I was like, oh, that's the last thing that everybody thinks about. And I think your remark was, no, this is the first thing everybody should be thinking about is security in your application before you even think about putting it online or whatever the case is. Let's talk about the security side. So we'll be coming around that bend in the next episode as we land, like I said, land this plane, the DevOps Handbook.
Yeah, so we'll figure it out. We're going to try to do something engaging where there's actually some coding going on, maybe some experimentation. There's so much in our world right now that we could be reading, we could be talking about, we can be exploring. Hit us up on our socials. If you have any suggestions, please let us know. And you can always catch past episodes on our YouTube channel. So Cover the Code, hit us up. Yes, I think have I showed everybody our little sticker? Have I showed?
You know what? If you did, and I know you that you did, go ahead and do it again.
Show you again, because so when he said he was traveling, he was so close that he didn't
Right.
pick up his sweatshirt. So now I have to mail it to him. But we have
Yeah.
these wonderful little stickers, and I have to mail them to him so he can have them when he goes to DevOps
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, and I didn't think about that. I got to be swagged out.
You gotta be swagged out. We're gonna wear our matching hoodies on DevOps days, like
There we go.
with our own little faces on them. That's gonna be so cute. So thank you for listening. Thanks for joining us, and until next time.
Until next time, we will see you later.
See you next week.